I remember we had a client. It was before I was working in B2B. We were working with a chocolate brand. A lot of content is people love chocolate, which is a very common knowledge. And I was doing a research and audience call, and one woman told me that she was hiding in the bathroom to eat chocolate away from her kids.
Yep.
And that is an insight. That's insights I'm talking about. It's something not pretty, something you cannot pull out of a person first 5, 10 minutes. You need to warm them up to. And that's what I find also happens with surveys. It's great quantitative data, but you simply will not get those golden insights you can have while having a call with a person.
Welcome to Social Pulse Podcast B2B Edition, your dedicated source for mastering B2B social media marketing challenges authentically. I'm your host, Mike Galton, and in each episode, we dive deep into the complex world of B2B marketing, from effective content creation to strategic social selling, sharing insights and strategies you can use right away. Let's jump into today's episode. Welcome back to Social Pulse Podcast B2B Edition, where each and every week we're talking to marketing professionals just like you who are going through many of the same struggles that you're going through, and they're sharing their stories. Subscribe to find in each episode the inspiration, the motivation, and the perspiration that go into growing and scaling organizations like yours. Now, when was the last time you genuinely enjoyed reading B2B content on social media? For most of us, our feeds are filled with product announcements, feature lists, and corporate updates that fail to capture attention or spark real conversations. Now, if you're responsible for for your company's social media, you might find yourself wondering how to break free from this pattern. How do you transform technical information into content that resonates with your audience while still maintaining professional credibility? Today, we're tackling this challenge head on with Marie Skachko, founder of Growth Moves and host of the Growth Moves podcast. Marie specializes in helping B2B companies develop social media content that drives thought leadership and creates meaningful connections with prospects. Through her work, she's built proven systems for creating content that sales teams can actually use and that target audiences want to share. Her practical approach has helped countless B2B brands find their authentic voice on social media while driving real business results. Hey, Marie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me over.
My pleasure. I am so excited and anxious to get into this with you because I know this is an area where myself and many other marketers need a lot of help. Let's start by talking about our missteps. What do you think some of the biggest mistakes or the biggest mistake that you see B2B businesses and companies make with their social media content?
I think it all starts with operating without strategy or having a strategy in place and simply not use it. And it's like a domino effect. If you don't have a strategy in place or you're not using it, all other efforts from there just fall short. When we start working with clients, I always look at 5 things. So that help me to build a strategy for them for social media. And it's their previous efforts. So, what worked for them, what didn't work. And I also check if they bought any followers because with some clients on Instagram, even if they B2B brands and they're in this space, they still bought a few fake followers. And that does affect the overall performance of the channel. And sometimes it can take months to bring it back, or even we had some cases where we had to restart an account. And that just makes fake followers make the feedback loops irrelevant. So you cannot look at the performance of all the previous posts they did. And then we also look at the competitors, buyer group, their goals. And here is also one biggest mistake I see companies do is not connecting their social media to their top business goals. So social media is operating in a completely different direction than their business, where social media actually can help your business reach your top strategic goal way faster. And that some businesses just simply fail to connect those. two things.
That sounds like a terrific approach for any business, for any social media manager, whether you're working with clients or you're in your own business. Make sure you have those processes nailed. But let's talk about some of these boring industries, the dry B2B topics that many of us are plagued to have to be in. We're not all blessed to work for, tourism of Miami, Florida beaches or something like that. What's your process then for transforming what I would consider to be dry topics into engaging social media content?
Well, I think engaging always starts with audience. So it should be audience centric. One thing that I also notice in the space is when certain social media pages are overly us focused. So the company just talks too much about themselves, their features, and doesn't include their audience at all. Here it's also a little bit sad because there have been statistics that around 65% of marketers rarely or never do audience research. So they operate on assumptions. And it's just a place where you can create a lot of content which just doesn't resonate with the audience. So it's not engaging for them. So one creator I really love, Mark Thomas, he works in growth in Podia. He created a product that helps to collect those insights from different departments in the company because usually they are throughout the whole company. So they're in the sales department, they're in the product department. And then just because there's a slight misalignment between the teams, those insights never are collected in one place. So, first would be making sure you collect customer insights, making sure that you do audience research. As I mentioned in the last question, audience research is part of the strategy. And I even try when I already work with clients, making sure we're doing it regularly. Ideally, audience research is ongoing, it never stops. So we develop certain content series. For instance, I have a client in circularity. We developed a weekly series, People and Circularity, where we ask their ideal client, basically circular managers or e-commerce managers, certain questions that also help us make sure we are on the same page with our ideal client. It can also be a podcast. So there are so many ways to keep up with your audience. It's just making sure that you're creating audience centric content. And then also engaging for me, we try to include some storytelling because even when I scroll through social media, when company provides you only facts, it's hard to engage with that piece of content. So you can reply something like, "Oh, okay," or you can have a question in your mind, but it doesn't really drive you to comment, to share your side of the story. Whereas when you create a storytelling format, here it's important also to make sure that it's relevant to your audience. It's not just storytelling for the sake of storytelling, where I can see some like CEO talking about a certain thing and the audience cannot relate to that at all. Here, storytelling just opens up people to relate to that. It's if you're actually sharing a story that's in their they can relate to, and then share their side of the story and their opinion. So storytelling is a great way to engage audience more.
I definitely want to unpack the storytelling a bit, but before we do, take us back to the audience part where you were talking about getting to know your customers, getting to know your audience. You mentioned having a podcast, which was great. I definitely see that there's a couple of general techniques. There's a one-to-one technique where you're either interviewing on a podcast or you're just doing private customer interviews and discovery calls, which is extremely informative yet time consuming. But there's also one-to-many approaches where you're issuing surveys and that sort of thing. Have you found a difference in success? Are there any particular tools that you've used or tactics that could help the audience who's listening today right now? Maybe they've never done this kind of thing before. What should they be looking at?
I think if you're doing completely audience research for the first time, we found that landing 5 to 7 calls with your ideal client. So for around 30 minutes, 20-30 minutes call where you have one clear goal. So it's also one mistake I see my clients do is that they have 5 goals for one call and then they are lost and they're not sure what to focus on. So having one clear goal for the call with the client and then making sure that you're trying to understand their day to day as much as you can. You crafted the questions in advance, and then we pull so much insights from those 5 to 7 calls that it's enough for a few quarters of the content. And why 5 to 7? We found that it's just like a happy medium place where answers start to get repetitive. There we also know that it's then we are basically discovering the commonalities in our ICP. There are always survey approach, but for content specifically, it helps me to have those insights. I remember we had a client, it was before I was working in B2B. We were working with a chocolate brand, but I'm just gonna make an example here. And a lot of content is people love chocolate, which is a very common knowledge. And I was doing a research and audience call, and one woman told me that she was hiding in the bathroom to eat chocolate away from her kids.
Yep.
And that is an insight. That's insights I'm talking about. It's something not pretty, something you cannot pull out of a person first 5-10 minutes. You need to warm them up to. And that's what I find also happens with surveys. It's great quantitative data, but you simply will not get those golden insights you can have while having a call with a person.
That is so true. When you talk to folks like that and you get those nuggets, the marketing copy writes itself. I mean, just imagine the chocolate bar is so good, you have to eat it by yourself.
Yeah, and that's an insight. You can pull
And
it in so many directions.
every parent listening resonates with that right now because they know their kids want it as soon as they see it in their hands and they know they don't want to share. Totally understand that. I love these insights. The advice I'll give folks too, I'll just drop in because I've done these kinds of interviews. Go into them with open minds. Try not to ask leading questions. Try to ask open ended questions and just let the people talk. And another quick tip is find out what systems your sales team is using. Like, do they have Gong or some other platform that's recording and monitoring sales calls? Because you can get so many insights from your prospects, who hopefully
Yeah.
will be your your customers and share some of those same nuggets.
And again, yeah, I want to do again like a little shout out to Mark Thomas because he developed an amazing product which helps you to gather the insights in between departments about customers. That's also a great help.
Awesome. We'll look that up. We'll include a link to Mark and his solution in the show notes. So let's talk about storytelling. I love that you brought that up. Are there any specific techniques that work particularly well for B2B brands when it comes to storytelling on social media?
Well, there are certain bigger places where you can use storytelling. For instance, there is strategic narrative. So, a strategic narrative is like a story about who you are as a company rather than what you do. It's very specific because it cannot be created by any agency. It should be created by founders, founding team, investors. So basically, everyone who is very much intertwined in the values and the creation story. And it communicates your opinion on the market, how your product helps people. So it's usually one sentence, but it's formed by the founding team. For instance, there is a company Cognism, and their strategic narrative is that the marketing process is broken right now, or something along the lines. So you are creating like a narrative, a statement about the niche, about your product, and then you're explaining it further through different POVs or content topics. That's one thing that comes to mind because it's just a great way to humanize your brand a little bit. Some companies tend to focus on features, which just a lot of the audience cannot relate to. So, strategic narrative is just a way to add more human part to it. Another thing is founder story. So it's basically the story of a founder, why he created the product, what is the product is solving. It's very similar to strategic narrative, but there the focus is on the founding person or leader. And my favorite one is case studies. So, viewing case studies also through the prism of storytelling. I follow the framework. Usually it depends also case by case. But the problem, so what was the problem your customer was facing? Then the goal, what was their biggest goal they wanted to achieve with your product, or just generally frustrations along the way? Because in day to day there are problems that appear, so like what were the frustration along the way, and then how did you solve that, and the end is the outcome, so how you help them to achieve the goal they wanted to achieve. And that also shifts the focus from your company to your customer, and being not problem centric, but still focusing more on the goal and problem helps other companies in this similar niche relate more to that rather than starting off with this feature and this thing. So, storytelling along the lines of the B2B world, I think it's strategic narrative, founder story, and case studies.
As the chief storyteller for Girl Pulse, I love everything that you just said. My whole role is about surfacing customer stories and turning them into terrific success stories that our content and social media teams can use. I know though with social media, there's this tension between providing what we're talking about, professional content, and more kind of casual engaging content, fun meme type stuff. How do you strike that balance between wanting to always deliver value, whether it's stories or announcements, or those things are necessary sometimes, and trying to cater to the demand on social, which is just to have fun entertaining content? How do you approach that?
I think that it's very much company specific. So one person cannot answer that because it will look different for different audiences. One thing I would say is not doing it from your own perspective. So you are not your audience and you simply cannot understand what would be too much for them and what not unless you test it. So I always advice to just test certain thing on your audience and see how it performs. And I also, funny enough, see a trend now that's overly polished content. So very much video edited is not performing so much better now than simply videos filmed on the phone, or like talking about employee generated content, for instance. An employee can film a video in the company on not sometimes even super high quality phone camera, and it still would perform because it's resonates with the audience, or it's just adds this human element to it. So I always recommend to test everything on your audience. Make sure you research it first and then test it on your audience. Make sure you are not adding your own perception to it too much because it can be very much misleading. And then test in a lot of ideas without overly polishing them. And then if it's well accepted by the audience, so they interact, they comment, they like, then you can invest more into that idea and see how you can create more high quality content from it. So I think now we live in the era that if it resonates with the audience, it doesn't need to be overly polished. And again, talking it's like casual is very subjective and you need to check everything with your audience.
Folks, go back and listen to that segment. He was sharing so many valuable truths, and I particularly loved you are not your audience. That's something it's easy for us as marketers to forget, but it's so true, and it's hard for us to get out of those silos and take off the blinders, whatever analogy you wanna use, but you gotta do it, and certainly talking to those customers will help that. I'm wondering if you could share an example maybe of a B2B company that you've worked with or maybe one that you've simply seen, but they're really nailing social media storytelling, particularly in these kinds of dry niches and industries.
Yeah, one company I'm really loving right now is TLDB. So they are in B2B SaaS space, which is super crowded right now. So their competition is super high. And they are basically an AI meeting recording tool. So again, AI. Now there are lots of platforms with AI, but how they do storytelling, which is also very interesting, they do it through humor sketches. So they take certain pains of their ideal clients, and their ideal clients are in sales, marketing, and product teams mainly. And then they would create a short sketch under 1 minute with dialogues. There are always two same people in video content, so it works also great for the brand recognition. But because it's short video, just the content format performs well across all social media platforms. So they put it on LinkedIn, on X, on YouTube Shorts, on Instagram and TikTok. So they can distribute the same short piece of content, so short, funny video across all social media. And that worked amazing for them. So they grew a following pretty quickly across all social media platforms. Overall, I think they have around 300,000 followers. They became they got an award from LinkedIn recently. So I think they nailed it with format and also viewing storytelling, not only through text form or video form where you just sit in front of the camera or do a voiceover, but through the shorter humor sketches. And because the audience is under a lot of stress usually, so sales teams with high targets, marketing teams, now the budgets are getting cut. Product teams, when the environment is stress, like if a person operates in a stress environment, humor usually performs really well for them because there are already so much informative content in the B2B space and in B2B SaaS especially. So I really love how they approach storytelling, not through a familiar format, but more through the humor format.
What a terrific example. Thanks for sharing that. I'll give a shout out to Evit Kronova, our social media manager here at Agorapulse, that has a very similar approach. Folks, follow us on TikTok or Instagram or wherever you want to consume some vertical video format because she's doing those kinds of similar short form videos and telling stories as a social media manager, experiencing many of the same things that you are. Folks, we're talking with Marie Skachko about creating rich stories and engaging social media posts, even for comparatively dry industries. But how will you know which posts are resonating and which ones are falling flat? For that, you need a great reporting solution.
Actually can't say enough great things about the reporting with Agora Pulse. I feel like that is my job security every month. My clients aren't that active on social media, which is why they have me manage their profiles for them. And when they get that report, it verifies that they're making a good investment.
The metrics downloads are so simple and easy to read, and it really helps me show where we are doing things right on social and where we need to improve.
So I think one of the main reasons why we decided to move to Agora Pulse is because it's a more comprehensive, integrated tool for all of our marketing needs. So rather than what we have had to do historically with Sprout, which is use certain parts of that platform that work really well and then supplement it with other outside tools, by moving to Agora Pulse, we were able to keep all of that into one, into one technology platform, which is not only a time saver, but it also makes sure that our analytics and all of our reporting's on point because we're pulling all from the same source.
It's a really great platform for agencies. It makes it really easy to manage, but gives me really, really, really robust information that actually helps me develop better strategies for my clients and better plans of action.
So, Marie, we've got social media managers who are now creating sketch content and other kinds of storytelling approaches, which is fantastic. What role do you think their bosses, the company executives, or maybe just other employees in the company, what role should they play in this whole content creation process?
I think it depends very much on the growth stage. Depending on the growth stage, involving certain people can just drive trust and humanize their brand again. I mentioned humanizing the brand a lot, but what we see right now is that people tend to trust other people more than they do brands. I think coming from the past where brands just overly complimented themselves, being the best innovative solution. So statistics says that people trust people more. So including a founder story, including your subject matter experts, so people with expertise on specific topic. Sometimes you even have people who match your ideal client inside of your company. So it's a great way to include them in this space where ideal client hangs out, where they can share the story, mentioning how you solve certain challenges. Again, storytelling in your own company. And it would be sharing your narrative without overly advertising your company again. And then there is also employee generated content where just it doesn't even need to be around your company or around your zone of expertise, just people sharing their day to day behind the scenes just exposes more people to your brand. So again, and you helps you to stay top of mind. One of my favorite stories is David Garrett, ex-CEO of Drift. He wrote a book, Founder Brand, and basically he shared how his CEO, David Cancel, he created demand for the products yet to be created. So they had a year where he guested actively on podcasts, on conferences. He was creating content on back then Twitter. They started their own podcast as well. And in around 1 year, they created 3,000 free subscriptions for Drift. So your brand and your experience as a founder, including other people, can just drive more awareness to the product and help you stay top of mind, basically drive more visibility for your brand.
Love it. So we're talking about creating story-based content. We've kind of implied LinkedIn almost inherently because we're talking about B2B, but we've also talked about Instagram and TikTok, and you could throw in Facebook and YouTube Shorts, and you mentioned UGC, and I think some of the folks listening might be feeling a little overwhelmed at this point because we're talking all channels, all kinds of content. And how do you maintain consistency then? And when it comes to voice and quality, when you're creating content across all these different channels?
I mentioned strategic narrative, and when I start with a client, I always make sure that they have a strategic narrative in place because what happens with content now we have social media, we have PR department, we have sometimes personal brands of CEOs or leaders managed by completely different people. So, in strategic narrative helps to create one direction and help to make sure that we are not creating content that just doesn't align with the product and builds the right association for people. So there is an easy framework developed by Abad Harain and Todd Clauser, which starts with strategic narrative and then grows into different POVs and subtopics. There's also the CEO Chris Walker of Refine Labs, he also talks about strategic narrative. So I think just having this sentence, some companies even just do one word, where you understand the direction of the topic, the direction which you want to go with content. And we usually then also break them into POVs, like 3 or 4 POVs, which we then, when we create content, we can see which piece, um, which content match which POV. So here I think it's just important to have a strategic narrative and also make sure that you create around 3 to 4 POVs around why your audience would care for your product, what problem you're solving, and which association you want to build with that.
Terrific. So we're setting up different POVs. We're setting up an entire strategic narrative. We're weaving stories, our customers' stories, our founder stories, our brand stories into all these different posts. How do you know what the overall impact is then on the business from all of this content? How are you measuring social media success?
Yeah, I'm going to circle back to the first question, is making sure that you're actually connecting social media to top strategic goals, business and marketing. So taking 3 to 6 months goals and then breaking it into smaller and bigger content goals. And then also checking the tactical action you need to take for each goal individually for each channel. And also shout out to Mina Misbahi, because while interviewing her, we also were talking how important it is then to set up tactical action which you choose not to take next 3 to 6 months. So it's checking the top strategic goals, connecting the social media goals to those goals, which you can track each month, and then choosing tactical action which you're gonna do to reach those, and the things which you're not gonna do. So laser focusing so that social media actually drives business goals and not operates as a separate, yeah, like as a separate function of the company, because then you sometimes can have a confused leadership around what is it the social media actually doing, which is a very dangerous spot to be, because a confused CEO is just like then an angry CEO basically. You need
Yeah.
to connect social media to the overall business growth.
Thinking about what you aren't going to do sounds incredibly powerful. And gosh, in like 150 interviews I've done over the past 12 months, you're the first one to talk about what we shouldn't do. Can you just give us a couple examples of what you had in mind, for yourself or a client, what we shouldn't be doing?
So depends so much on the goals, but usually what happens is that you need to do million of tasks all yesterday, not even today, and it's just discussing why you're not doing specific things. It's not because you simply like don't have the time or efforts. It's just that certain things they require laser focus and not all things that requires her laser focus. So here it's just important to identify what action is going to be taken to achieve certain goals. And because again, it's better to over communicate than under communicate. It's just creates a space where the leadership and the social communication team are on the same page, and it's all pre-discussed, and then we just pull all the resources into the reaching the goals.
So an example might be saying, we are not going to invest time into launching a blue sky profile at this time because of XYZ. It doesn't fit our target demographic. It's an emerging platform. We don't have bandwidth. We have all these other priorities, something like that. Would that be an example?
Yeah. Yeah, it's very much business specific. So it's we want to launch a podcast, we want to start collaborating. It's making sure you're not, yeah, like spreading yourself too thin and having laser focus on 2 to 3 goals. because then it's better to reach those and then maybe shift the targets a little bit rather than have 6 goals then you are not able to achieve at the end of 3 months.
Yeah, I love that because to your point, it's over communication. So if somebody else in the organization, whether they're your direct boss or not, wants to know, to my example, why aren't we on Blue Sky? You demonstrate that you've already thought about it and you determine strategically that it's not a good fit right now. And you have specific examples why. And then it also helps you as the marketer push back on yourself because in a few weeks you might be personally on Blue Sky or whatever, and feel like, oh man, we should rethink this. But no, we already decided this quarter we're not doing that. If you folks listening are familiar with the EOS system, it's this combination of visionary and integrator that you're instilling in yourself, at least in your department, right? And in your strategic plan, that immediate challenge to ideas that, to your point, Marie, can derail us if we already have our priorities and we decide to add 3 more goals and priorities in the middle of the quarter, that's not going to be very successful.
Yeah, and I think part of being marketer, social media marketer is communicating certain things to leadership because it's also sometimes you can be pushed as a marketer to reach certain things faster or to show the ROI of certain things way faster than it comes. And here it's also we are sometimes leaning on the qualitative feedback rather than quantitative feedback again because yeah, I think my point here is over communicating at the very beginning the things we are doing just helps you to focus in the process and not communicate it again to the leadership that we need to stay on the track in order to see results for a few months. So it's just all communicated at the very beginning.
Yeah. Now, I should add a caveat. I love Blue Sky. Folks, you should consider Blue, but only if it makes strategic sense for your business. So, Marie, what other tools do you recommend for helping, B2B marketers manage engaging B2B social media content? What's in your tool stack today?
Yeah, so for ideating content, I'm now I'm not gonna say the tools which a lot of people again it's subjective. Design tools I'm using Photoshop, Canva. Currently I play a lot with ChatGPT and I think it's again like if you're not working with AI, there's gonna be someone who will outperform you who works with AI and understands it, how to use that. So I play a lot with ChatGPT of again, like scraping different social media pages and just seeing how it performs, the tone of voice, the pieces of content that perform really well and not. It helps with the competitor research, with company research as well, like scraping social media posts of one platform, for instance, scraping LinkedIn and then comparing the tone of voice, brand guidelines throughout different social media. Sometimes you can find that on one platform, your brand of voice is different. And then for creating, I use Planable because it helps me to collaborate with different creators and approve posts quicker with the leadership because basically it helps you to schedule content and multiple people can jump and view one piece of content without downloading anything. So right now I'm really loving Planable and I play with ChatGPT a lot because I think the AI can help make our life as marketers way easier.
Obviously, I couldn't agree more in regards to the use of artificial intelligence. 2 tips I'll share with you folks listening. First, use ChatGPT or Gemini, particularly if you're on a Google Workspace plan. You probably already have free access to Gemini Advanced. Latest models are terrific. One I was going to mention earlier, and I lost track of that, was that you can use Gemini's deep research tool to get a handle on who your audience is. If you really don't even know, you can do a ton of research with deep research and get all kinds of terrific insights. The other thing you should be doing is setting up a custom GPT or a gem. These are personalized, customized instances of the AI that help it understand who you are, what your tone of voice is, who your target audience is, what your goals and aspirations are for your role, and so on. And we'll link to some resources in the show notes on how to do that if you don't know. But that makes sure that when you're talking to ChatGPT or you're talking to Gemini, it's not just this faceless, nameless AI. It's a personalized version that understands you and your business and what you're trying to accomplish. And so the strategic insights it gives you are just so much better, so tailored to what you need to accomplish. Marie, this has been great. I've got one more question. I'd love to know, for our audience's benefit, are there any specific resources or thought leaders that you're following to stay current on B2B social media trends?
Yeah, there are two groups which I love. It's Exit 5. They are around B2B marketing and was a bigger focus on American market. So the founder is Dave Garrett, the one I mentioned who wrote Founder Brand. It's a community, so it's a great place to ask questions and get your feedback on certain things. And also, I'm really loving the marketing meetup. It's a marketing community, also is focused on B2B. Talking thought leaders, I really love Travis Tyler. He is a senior social media manager at Motion, and he's a perfect person to go mixing education and entertainment. He used to work in PandaDoc and he drove a crazy growth for them. I don't remember numbers, but I think it was over 1,000% of organic growth or something like this. So he's an amazing person to see the insights on connecting education and entertainment. And I would also say people I mentioned. So it's Mark Thomas. He is working in growth at Podia. He also has his own brand, Positive Human. He has really interesting products or just like things to check. As I mentioned, the customer research tool for the companies. And then also he has one ideation card deck, which helps you to come up with ideas and it works on the limitations. So it's basically helps you to come up with the ideas, content ideas, or just in general, some creative ideas. And then the last person would be Mina Misbahi. Sorry, Mina, if I'm mispronouncing your surname. I'm not sure here as well. But she's a great person to talk about content repetition. She is a content consultant and for startups and for leaders. And she has an engineering background. So she's a great resource to learn how to repeat messaging because you don't need to overwhelm your audience with multiple messaging. Sticking to 3, 4 core messages is enough. And she just does amazing visualizations of her messages as well.
Fantastic. As always, folks, we'll have all those names, those books, those groups, everything linked in the show notes below so you don't have to search too far. Just scroll down. But Marie, you've been absolutely fantastic. This has been such an enjoyable talk. I know folks are going to want to actually go back and listen to it a couple more times. But if they've got more questions or they want to reach out to you, where should they go?
They can go to my LinkedIn. It's Marie Sketchko. I hope they don't struggle with my surname too much. But you can also just type Growth Moves and you can find me through the company page.
Terrific. Well, that's all the time we've got for today, friends. Don't forget to find us on Apple and leave us a review. We'd love to know what you think. Until next time. Thank you for joining another episode of Social Pulse Podcast B2B Edition, hosted by Mike Alton and powered by Agorapulse, the leading social media management solution. Learn more at agorapulse.com. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player and leave us a review. We value your feedback and look forward to bringing you more useful insights.